Hello. My name's Lucy. I have been working on the marketing and the design for this project since about October time. Katie and John, they've been working on the project since August officially last year. Katie's been working on product design and the research. John has been working on innovation, processing and the fabrication of the prototypes. I should probably mention that Glasgow Wood Recycling is a social enterprise. We take waste wood of all varieties to produce timber products, furniture for a wide range of indoor and outdoor spaces. Quite a good part of our sales have been through scaffolding boards, so people doing their own DIY projects. Some have been larger supplied to restaurants and events companies. We also offer a bespoke service for furniture for anyone that wants something that's a bit more unique. Maybe they've got their own piece of wood that they want made into something in particular. We also take on larger scale projects within community gardens, schools, for example. But a key objective for Glasgow Wood Recycling is to provide volunteer and training opportunities to local people of Glasgow as a way of helping to tackle unemployment and social exclusion. So initially, the barrel project actually began percolating in early 2019. There were several workshops that were carried out which involved a few members of the team at Glasgow Wood Recycling, and it resulted in the barrel feasibility study. So this study looked in depth at existing processes that were already available on the market, probably more predominantly in America, such as straightening through steaming, and the businesses and the products available in the market. We also investigated these techniques in the UK to see if we could find anyone else who may well be able to help us with it. But in the end, we didn't see the value in using so much labour and energy to move so far away from the original staves. I think we discovered that it was important that we celebrated the staves and the shape of them as much as possible. And so it was also estimated from the study that around 250,000 disused casks are in circulation every year. So it was clear there's a huge opportunity to develop something at scale. I actually discovered that many of the casks used by Scottish distilleries have actually come from other distilleries from around the world. So it's, I guess, inadvertently, Scottish distilleries are already being quite sustainable in reusing these casks. So why not try and continue it, really? We also touched on how the casks could be integrated, the processing of the casks could be integrated into the production capacity at the workshop, and how it could be a chance to maybe look into some partnerships where there might be gaps in specialist processing techniques, because there are a few people in the UK that are doing this type of thing on a quite small scale. And it was also identified that cladding, fencing and screens and outdoor play equipment were areas of strong potential, basically. So the objectives for the project, we obtained funding from Zero Waste Scotland, which is how this project is funded. And the core objective of the project is to make innovative use of the oak staves, and investigate how GWR could commercialise some of these more successful products, and also to work out how to market these products as capable of being able to reduce a company's or an organisation's carbon footprint, and contribute more to a circular economy. So the market analysis, this is quite a small overview, but a great deal obviously has been affected by the pandemic. So it's key that we consider where demand might shift to. So we actually create products where there will be a demand for them. At the moment, the market's quite heavily saturated with small artisan producers. You'll see in the bottom right corner there, making whiskey barrel furniture, which remains quite close to the original shape of the cask. But then on the flip side, there are a lot of highly refined products that are on the market where we're competing in a market where there's trained professional craftsmen basically making products. So I think we have to remember that Glasgow Wood Recycling sits somewhere in the middle, still offering high quality products, but made by an organisation who are making a difference within the area and providing training and work opportunities. I guess we want to move away from the whiskey barrel product as much as possible, and kind of carve our own place in the market where we fit in between these two areas. And so we began prototyping. In the early stages, it was quite quickly, we quite quickly were able to produce more refined prototypes compared to existing products on the market. Again, innovation was quite important for us to meet our objectives. So again, we wanted to just move away from what was already there. John did a huge amount of trialling on different finishes, which you'll be able to ask him about at the end if that's something you'd like to find out more. Throughout the whole process, though, and along with finishing and prototyping of the actual products, we had a bit of a breakthrough in terms of processing. Without developing a more efficient processing technique, it would be quite a barrier for us to successfully commercialising the products because of how the barrels are made with so many different sizes and widths of staves. So having broken apart approximately, I think, about 80 casks since the beginning, John has become quite familiar with the shape and obviously the huge range in the stave widths. So without overcoming this, applications for the staves are quite limited, and outputs are quite laborious in production. So yeah, after using this processing technique that we have, John has been able to really refine and streamline the production and improve the efficiency of creating these products. And yeah, these process staves have been used in much of the pilot products, but we're also discussing the potential for these staves to be a product in themselves. So if someone wants to buy a batch of X with staves, they would be able to. So from this, we developed our 4 ranges. These are on digital catalogues. Yep. And so fencing and screens. So obviously with traditional uses for these panels, including residential and commercial green spaces and gardens, and including the application for kind of unsightly pipes, waste bins for larger industry or councils. I guess these are likely to remain quite stable markets, but it might be quite beneficial to identify where the demand may well be shifting to and areas where unusual applications we could put these fences and panels. The impact of COVID means there is space to produce products which could assist with social distancing. And a need for transformational environments and a transition to more outdoor living actually and lifestyles means that people are improving their homes and gardens more. Obviously throughout lockdown, everyone's been working at home. B&Q sales, as we know, are through the roof. And home working, almost 70% of the UK workforce are now working from home. And we think that with suitable fixtures, such as casters, for example, and the right types of finishes and the right type of refinement, these screens could be used as a tool to create a divide between home and work spaces. And we also think there's potential in, I guess, traditional office spaces, which are likely to see huge changes again, because people are not going to be returning in the same numbers that they were before. And again, with the right finishes and the design adjustments, these could complement the right spaces really well. There's potential for conferences and events in providing something that people could hire. Whiskey barrels obviously naturally lend themselves to the hospitality sector. Outdoor seating areas for bars and restaurants, and indoor again where the correct kind of aesthetics arise. Obviously the industry at the moment is on pause, with not quite so many businesses having the funds to be able to renovate during this particular period, but overall there's probably quite an opportunity, with a huge shift in attitudes towards being a little bit more environmentally conscious, and looking for more carbon reducing products to buy into, basically. And we've also actually discussed with a Scottish national park about the potential for the casks as a solution for footbridges for the handle rails. It's only small, but with the correct expertise, such opportunities could hopefully develop into larger projects. And I should probably also note, you're probably quite aware that these are just mock-ups, but we're very keen to get some live projects going. Likely to see quite big changes. And as much as they're still going to be here, yeah, they're going to need to be changed quite a lot. And again, with suitable finishes, fixtures, we're hoping that these could be quite suitable. There could also be potential for conferences and events in producing something that could be used to be hireable. And of course, they're whiskey barrels, so they lend themselves quite naturally to hospitality environments like bars and restaurants. So they could be used for outdoor settings as people look to do outdoor dining and drinking. So yeah, move on. Our second range was outdoor play. I'm not going to touch on this quite so much, but yeah, we're hoping that this is going to provide a bit more of a durable and unique alternative to what's already on the market. We did have a selection of these products which were trialled by a community group in Glasgow. They carried out some pretty rigorous testing for us, so they gave us some good feedback. But they were really well received as well. But with obviously health and safety regulations in place for these products, a lot of investigation is probably going to need to be done in making sure that we meet the certifications and the guarantees that need to be done for these types of products. We have cladding as well, is our third range. So obviously I mentioned before, we worked with Chivas to produce to design their reception area. So you can see there we've got a feature wall, which was made from whiskey barrels. A barrier for us, I guess, a little bit is to work out and identify the cladding system that is kind of most commonly used throughout the industry, or whether we provide our own system or a system at all, because there's quite a few different ones that are available. But obviously we'll hopefully discuss this a bit more at the end. And obviously the option, we've produced a few different variations on cladding systems that you would apply with panels, but it could be an option that we provide them as batches of staves where people will order a certain amount at a certain width, a certain length, and they'll be able to make their own configurations and fix them however they see fit. And the final range, we have outdoor furniture. So this range, going back to the objectives, is to try and use as much of the barrel as possible that we could. So one of the benefits of this range was that we were able to use the lids as well, which were quite tricky to use there because they're obviously round shapes. They've got quite a few strange, all of the staves in them are all cut in a way which means that you can't quite use all of them. So the smaller pieces means that they were able to fit into the seating panels or the panels in general. So this, as you can see, it fits quite well alongside the fencing and screens. So it would be great to see if we could apply them and find someone who might be interested in utilising both of them to sit them together. Yeah, again, we think that in the right space, this range could also sit well indoors. Obviously it's quite limited, but there is still potential for that. And obviously the finishes and the colours of the frames are completely customizable. We just need to identify who we would use for that. And of course, there's quite a focus at the minute trying to working out embodied carbon. And obviously we understand that steel, I guess, is particularly carbon heavy. But if we're able to calculate the, we're keen to see if we can work it out so that we can make improvements. But we hope that producing this range is a bit more of a durable solution, and it may well be that it extends the life of these staves even longer, as another one of our objectives, really. So yeah, I guess this is now the Q&A workshop session at the end. But yeah, there's a huge amount that we hope that you're able to help us with. And in turn, maybe there's something that this would fit into you and it may be beneficial for you as well. Yeah, thank you for listening.
Thanks very much, Lucy. That was great. Okay, we're going to move on to the Q&A feedback session discussion. So I may pick on some of you who are attending and ask you directly for a response. Maybe first though, Stephen from Zero Waste Scotland, I can see you here. Stephen, are you able to say anything about this project and maybe some of the other ones you're supporting that are very similar in vein, sort of circular economy type projects, developing products?
Yeah, hi. Actually, I wasn't involved in this specific one. That's one of the reasons why I've joined today, just to hear a little bit more about it. But yeah, no, we're supporting a lot of circular economy projects across the country, looking at just how we can reuse the very valuable materials that we have for high value products, services, just similar to this very project. So yeah, so just you asked there about other things which we're doing at the moment. A couple of them just kind of related to construction, and I'm looking at this picture and seeing bricks at the moment, is that we've just invested in something called the K-Brick, which is a Kenetech company who are making bricks now, on-fire bricks using 90% recycled material. Also supporting India Nature, who are making insulation from sisal and other hemp materials, natural materials being made, which will overtake the use of man-made materials in the insulation market. But there is other ones as well, which is innovation around about coffee grains being turned into cosmetic products. So the stories, there's just lots of stories there, and the RE-CASK one is a very positive one. But one of the big challenges is that taking a product, and let's face it, a waste, which rather would go to waste product, and turning it into something is great. But we really need people to start thinking about, when they make something new from the start, how can I recover those materials at the end of their life, or their first life, to turn them into something useful at the end? So that's another big thing, that's really the main one for us at the moment, is trying to get people to realise that. So, but this is a great product and project, and hopefully we'll be able to promote it across Scotland. So thank you for letting me join.
Great, that's great, Stephen. Thanks very much for that. So yeah, lots of other interesting projects going on as well. K-Brick is one I'd heard of before, so glad to hear that's going well. And India Nature, actually, we had them for a previous one of our sessions. So yeah, good to hear they're carrying on as well. Good stuff. Okay. Well, I might ask, I guess the point of this session is really to get feedback on some of what we've just heard about. And maybe if I firstly focus on the cladding product, which is probably the most applicable one to architecture for those people who are in attendance today. If we start with that one, architects in the room, can you see yourselves specifying this product as a cladding? Good to hear if you think there's any barriers that would prevent you from doing that. So maybe if I pick on Peter first. Peter, could you see yourself using this on one of your houses? What you currently have some timber-clad housing, don't you? Would this be a direct replacement for that sort of product?
Yeah, thanks, James. I knew you'd pick on me. But
First thoughts.
Actually, I had a kind of a question anyway that was kind of linked to that. And yeah, I think it's definitely something that we could use on some of our houses. I do a lot of one-off bespoke houses for private clients. So, you know, there's a wide variety of kind of solutions for the different buildings that we work on. But I was wondering, you mentioned at the start of the presentation that you had, or somebody had previously looked into reshaping the staves so that I'm assuming trying to make them straight again. And I was wondering how difficult that was, and whether or not there was any point in, or you know, how easy that would be, how much energy would go into it, how much it costs, and whether, you know, what you get out of it, what's the lifespan of the product, and you know, eventually to make it mainstream, I guess you'll need some kind of certification, BBA certificate or whatever. And I was just wondering if you'd looked into that, because without those kind of things, it's difficult to sell it to clients, you know, except for on smaller kind of like cabins and garden sheds, that kind of thing, I think would be easy. But to specify it for an alternative timber cladding for houses, you'll need to give the client a bit
more certainty, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, maybe John, you can comment on that. You work with these products. You want to say something on that process?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a couple of things about that. There's the dealing with steaming and how effective that can be, but there's also the issue of regulation and the changing nature of regulation in order to accommodate reused products. We've been, on the second point, we've been collaborating with the Centre for Wood Science at Edinburgh Napier, Dan Ridley-Ellis, specifically to look into some of these issues. It's been stymied rather by COVID because some of their facilities have not been open, so we've only gone partly down that route, and there's still more work to be done, hopefully in the next phase. But one of the issues there was talking about regulation and maybe the adaptation of a regulation being more attuned to the nature of a reused product. So there's that issue with it that is, I'd be interested to see what other people have thought about that. The initial query about steaming, this came up with the barrel feasibility project, which was conducted in quite a general broad strokes kind of way. And a lot of the research was done around a couple of instances of steaming, which were a little bit unproven. I've got experience of steaming in the past, and so I kind of knew a bit about it. And it intuitively, it seemed like it wasn't going to work. However, I did more research about that, and especially to do with anyone that's doing it on a commercial scale, of which not many people, you know, you'll know about maybe some of the people at Urkel or Isokon, and abroad Thonnet, the classic kind of instigators of this in the 19th century. But as Lucy alluded to, even if you could do it, there's a colossal investment about time, money, kits, and just getting it started. And that's when you're dealing with something that is virgin timber that you've grown in a plantation. What we're dealing out that is straight to start with. What we're dealing with is something that's bent already, so you're gonna have to rebend it back to a straight orientation, which theoretically goes against the physical nature of the wood. You're going to try and stretch it in a way that, in steaming terms, wouldn't really suggest itself. So there's problems with it. There's big problems with it. And the instances that the barrel feasibility project found were very small, and they weren't really commercial, and it was just people trying to have a go. When we pursued a couple of these projects, nothing really came of them. So on the same time, I was developing projects that processes that Lucy was referring to before, which were about not getting rid of the curve, but just straightening them along their length. And that enabled us to nest them together, enabled us to make sort of brickwork patterns and so on. And that is a far easier, that I instigated that and managed to do that on my own with existing plant, no extra staff. A volunteer, which is important for us, could do it. And it's the sort of process that could be done with a full extraction and very safely, just using a plain thicknesser, which is quite a safe machine to use. So that, combined with the steaming being a little bit untenable and unsustainable and heavy on energy, etc., that kind of got superseded by the parallel processing that I developed. So that's kind of where we've got to in terms of a process that we can use that transforms the stave, and we can design new things with it. So what we're doing now is we're just working with the new, it's like a kind of a new material component that enables more things to be made than with a conventional barrel stave. So that's something we're looking to collaborate again with academia, probably student briefs and things in the next stage to generate more designs and see where we can take it.
Another question, if you don't mind. You mentioned as well having there are 250,000 barrels in circulation, but how many of them are available? Like, can you get as many as you want at any time?
Yeah, so one of the findings of the feasibility study that we've been able to get some progress on was securing procurement. Our procurement of barrels, because we haven't really used barrels that much, we sell a lot of barrels chopped in half for planters, and then we just get them and they would come in and we would get enough to satisfy that demand. But if we were looking to scale up, which is one of the aims of the Zero Waste Scotland and ourselves, which it would need larger volumes. So over the course of this project, our CEO, Peter Lavelle, has partnered up in a more formal setting, I think, with Edrington's in order to secure a kind of a more predictable supply of barrels as we go on. So yeah, that's been a really key objective that we've managed to achieve.
And are you getting them free of charge, or is it like what?
No, we pay.
Okay.
We pay for them.
And what else? What other outlets do these whiskey companies have for, like? Are they otherwise paying to dispose of them?
Yeah, I don't know what the figures are in terms of the proportion that get chipped, but a lot of them do get chipped. Okay. And there's obviously a market for people selling barrels for garden planters, and there's maybe a small hobbyist craft element of production that goes on in Scotland, but it's minuscule really compared to the sort of volumes we're talking about that are being generated and that could become available. So I think that I can't really give you a figure on the proportion, but I would think it's pretty high, the amount that are not being reused, they're just going to chip or incineration.
Yeah. So they're getting some kind of income from that.
Yeah, and it fits in with the supporting industry to be included in the circular economy, which is another one of these sort of funded aspirations, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like and in the same way that our collaboration with the university or further education, we've been working with SMAS and SCIC in Construction Innovation Centre. You know, it's kind of joining everyone up on the journey, isn't it? And getting them as many minds and contributors to participate and also to benefit from the project.
Let's go to Robin next, if you've got a question.
Sorry, could I just like to clarify that a little bit? Thank you very much. You say there are 250,000 circulating, but how many barrels actually are, as it were, put on the market or chipped, whatever they're used for, per year? And then what is the basic cost? What are you paying basically for a barrel, which somebody is going to then process?
Yeah, so again, I'm not really certain of the figures, the proportionality of what goes to wood chip and what gets sold as whole barrels. I can't really give you that proportion.
The gross though, I mean, including the ones that are going to wood chip.
We've only working with figures, I think, from the feasibility project, which cites those sorts of figures of 250,000 per year.
So it's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I can only speculate that it's small, the amount that it's actually being reused. Maybe the Zero Waste Scotland might have some sort of...
and do you have a rough idea of how much a barrel would be available for somebody who wanted to, you know, buy a lot and do something with them?
Well, they're not... We've got a relationship with our suppliers, and because of the nature of our business, we're not a profit-making company. We're a not-for-profit charity.
Yeah.
So we maybe have a different kind of orientation towards the product than someone who's a regular business. Yeah. So I think that I wouldn't know what you would pay on the retail on the high street if you could get them from Edrington's. You might have to get them and have a sort of a special relationship. Historically, we've dealt with scaffold boards as our main product or our reused material. And again, most people wouldn't have a relationship with a scaffold board company to go and get them. They'd have to get them through someone like us. So I wouldn't know if that relationship could exist with someone like Edrington's. You know, they would have to go from maybe through a third party, a broker like us, if you like, a sales point.
I got a half a whiskey barrel planter for the garden a few years ago, and I think it was something like 30 or 40 pounds.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably about right. Yeah.
I had another question about, and it maybe could tie in with the scaffold thing, but have you looked at combining them? Combining the staves with other recycled materials like railway sleepers or the scaffold boards?
Yeah, I mean, Katie might be able to pick this up because she's been designing some of the grills, the screens Katie have had a bit of framework and what have you, haven't they? There's potential, isn't there, for doing that? Maybe Katie could.
Yeah, so because obviously the staves are curved, to make anything, and also because every single stave is different, to make things that we can replicate and we can produce en masse, like over and over again, we've made sort of frameworks, which is like the screens and the fencing all have frameworks behind them, which are made from, is it just CLS that we've made them from at the moment, John? Or is it's spruce, sorry.
It's
just
scaffold.
Pardon?
Scaffold boards.
All right, yeah, so we have combined this with the scaffold boards, but I think one of the problems is because obviously oak is going to outlast out in the garden or in an external environment, the oak will outlast the scaffold board, so you'd end up having to replace the frame. We don't get an awful lot of hardwood in that we could use consistently to make a frame. Like most of our collections are kind of, you know, stuff that's been ripped out of buildings, so it's not often the reason we use scaffold boards is because we know that we can get a certain number in and they're all going to be the same dimensions. give or take a few mil, so we can have a product range that most of our volunteers can be involved with the manufacture. So if we did, when we do incorporate other materials, we have to buy them in, and obviously we try and like source them responsibly, but it can be a bit difficult. Our main problem is just finding something that will last as long as the oak will.
What about the metal bands around the barrels, or have you looked at like scaffold poles, the steel scaffold poles? I'm just like,
we've looked at we've used the bands in some of the products, like the sandpits. The sandpit lids are made using the bands from around the barrels plus some ply on top. All of our prototypes at the moment, we've used, all of the materials are from our kind of stock that we've already got. We haven't really bought anything in. So if we've got the materials that we've had, you know, if we had a confirmed source of, like, you know, odd shaped bits of ply, we could like rely on that to then make our products. But because we don't have a like reliable source like that, we kind of have to sort of, you know, mix and match a little bit. With the bands, they're a bit thin they're a bit thin, and they kind of spring, so they're not very structural. Scaffold poles we've used in the past with the scaffold boards, have kind of tried to move away from that to make it a little bit more kind of refined, because you know how you see a lot of barrel furniture, like that Lucy mentioned earlier, like the artisan sort of outdoor furniture. It's all kind of a bit twee, but it's also not something that many of our volunteers, if any, could actually get involved with. So we've tried to like streamline these processes of making these furnitures so that we can include most of our volunteer workforce, because otherwise, you know, they'd spend hours doing sanding, which a lot of them aren't too keen on. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Say anything about that?
John, when you put the staves through the thicknesser, what are the range of thicknesses that you actually get?
Well, it's combined with another system where I grade the staves into widths, so I can choose my width of stave that I use. Because we've got a lot of space, we can break up barrels and we can grade them into size widths, which is a sort of another area of progress that we've made. And then I can thickness them without taking off an excessive amount of weight material. It's also talk. One of the things that Napier came up with was if we had a dedicated system of machining to actually keep the waste material, and then there's a market there for chips for barbecuing, that sort of thing. So that's a possible thing down the line if things got to that point where we might invest in a separate extraction system or what have you. But basically we can make the staves to whatever width we need, because I can machine them parallel.
Just clarify the range. I mean, what's the maximum, what's the minimum width that you... Well,
then on a barrel will yield different widths, all of them, or, you know, a 30 stave or barrel, a bourbon barrel will give you 30 different widths, ranging from 10 millimeters, maybe 10 millimeter to about 120 millimeters. So those different widths have got different applications. Some of the screens you'll see are made out of the narrow ones, and then we have a wider screen made with wider staves. But then the really wide ones, a lot of the craft people use those for making whiskey flights and so on. So each stave width might have a different application for a different sort of design.
Yes, I see that. That's what I need to understand. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And do they come in different thicknesses as well?
Yeah. It's an uneven thickness. Yeah, it is. So we can get an even width. We still have the curve, which can be uneven, but that's okay. Not that uneven. And then it's also sometimes a degree of thickness difference, but not a huge amount. The barrels I've been dealing with in this project, again, it's part of an area we can explore more, has predominantly been with bourbon barrels. We do get other barrels like the big sherry butts, which is another area that is there to explore as well.
I think the cost is something that's very important as well. I mean, the cost per square metre is probably a useful metric to know for a typical amount of cladding. I don't know, Peter or Robin, if either of you know typical costs per square metre for a timber cladding that you would typically use. Robin, maybe you don't use timber on your buildings.
I haven't got that figure, unfortunately, the top
Yeah,
of
yeah.
head, but I could go and find it.
I guess just a note that if people are going to be specifying this cladding,
Yes, yeah,
Glasgow Wood team would need to know a range of costs.
I think
We've provisionally worked out all of the costs based on John's times and our materials and, you know, the overheads and everything like that. So we do have prices.
Okay.
They're at the moment being kind of double checked by our CEO, but if that would help anybody with sort of giving us some more feedback, we could send some through by the end of the week or by the end of next week.
I think, yeah, it would be good.
You could check the likes of Russwood and Scottish Woods. I could imagine it would be somewhere like 25 to 30 pound a square metre supply for, you know, large.
I don't know, Lucy might have some input on this, but I think when I've looked, it's very wide, you know, from 30 quid to 120 quid. Like Russwood are quite a wide range, I think, in their product line. Yeah, so I think it's quite a broad area.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Okay, we're rapidly approaching 1 p.m. So just an opportunity for anyone else who's attending to ask any questions they have. I can see, Stephen, you asked one to do with the ironwork, which I think Katie covered, that they basically use what they've got as much as they can. Anyone else in the room got any particular queries hanging out?
Hi, could I ask one?
Yeah, go ahead, Catherine.
Sorry, I was late, so I didn't introduce myself. So I've got various hats. So one of them is the Alliance for Sustainable Building Products. So yeah, we're happy to have a chat with you and see. We work with a lot of architects and specifiers, so we can put you in touch with them. We're actually based in England, not Scotland. Can it travel? Have you worked out how far it can economically travel, either as a stave or a plank, or as a system?
Yeah, so everything, when we've installed cladding previously, like our Chivas Regal job, that was really heavily reliant on us actually physically being there to do the install, because then, you know, it was the first product, it was a prototype, so there was a bit of footery involved with installation. But what we have tried to do with this project is make sure that everything is palatable and then shippable sort of like nationwide. So yeah, there is, we also do, we have shipped staves and barrels actually. I think we shipped a load of barrels to Spain last year. So we are definitely open to shipping.
Yeah, and then how does it, as a sort of, if you use it as a cladding board outside, how does it weather? Do you know, sort of the aesthetics of it, I guess, and do you have to treat it? I guess there needs to be some treatment of it at some point.
Well, there's a choice. You could treat it, certainly. I guess one of the things about the oak material is that it's very durable, and it's a lot of its life has been, especially the end of life casks, have been stored outside. So they have the classic kind of oak, silver.
Sort of pre-aged then, in that case.
That's right.
You wouldn't expect it to change aesthetically.
Yeah. So you can have it. There's a number of finishes that we can share, because there's a few kind of trial finishes we've done. Getting back to the cladding, the portability of it. We've done a big project last year, was with Barclays, one of the first sort of architectural big projects, and that was just a supply of softwood cladding, of scaffold board cladding, but it was 200 square meters. And that went to a third party joiner, got fireproofed and went to get installed. So that was just a supply only job of a large volume. And I guess that's the kind of thing where just sending out these single stave items, or not mounted on a panel or mounted on multiple panels and sent out, is something that we're kind of interested in doing, I guess, and scaling up to those sorts of volumes. So yeah, the aspiration would be to certainly embrace it being as portable as possible and to be shipped. We do pallet and ship across the UK already with our own existing products, and we'd be looking to do that with these as well.
Yeah, that was my next question, really. I guess for you guys, the balance between sort of as a supply owner only, and then getting a third party to sort of fix it and install it, versus doing it all yourself. I don't know. Have you? Where do you want to be in that balance? Have you kind of worked that out?
We probably want to be in the easiest place.
Anything that is
ability to a fitter that would, let's happen with Barclays, and I would imagine that's probably what would happen. It's quite important to know things like Lucy was alluding to about cladding systems, and what's expected from a product, and the sort of specifications that an architect might need. Linking onto that, what became apparent with some of the feedback that we had from architects was, and maybe you'll echo this, is the need for digital assets in terms of like a digital 3D version in a CAD format of one of the products, so it could be slotted into an existing drawing without them having to render it. And similarly, you guys might require the same sort of assets for your drawings in order to aid procurement and cut down on your workload.
Yeah, that sort of thing always helps. And then I know you mentioned embodied carbon as well, didn't you, in terms of sort of and having that information available, which is also really really useful.
We work on a barrel being estimated to have 50 kilos of carbon, and I've been breaking that down into what an actual stave might be, but obviously the staves are different widths. But you can kind of calculate, so you've got a calculation on what we've used over the course of the project. And you can break it down to a stave, but you just get into it's more useful to have it, we could break it down into a square meterage figure, and that's echoing what James was saying.
Thank you. It's great. It's a great product.
Thank you.
Before I let you go, Catherine, at ASBP, I know you got lots of sort of innovation pitches and things going on all the time. Is there one coming up that this could fit into, maybe?
We had a reuse summit a few months ago. Was that in December with Richard Mehmet, actually, who I know quite well. You're hooked into the whole community wood? Yeah. So
I've just hooked into him in order to sell staves across the network as a remote sales.
Yeah.
So I've just emailed him this morning. I had a chat with him last week.
Yeah, he'll enjoy that challenge, I'm sure. So no, I know Richard quite well. So we will be doing more reuse summits. So happy to involve you at that point. And we've been also having a number of innovation pitches. They have been focusing on plastics, but I think we may move away from that and be a bit more all-encompassing. So we're having a break from them because they're quite hard to organise. But I think come sort of, I don't know, summer, autumn time, we'll start that up again. So yeah, happy to have a chat with you on that. Yeah.
Excellent. Sounds good.
I've got one more question. Yep. I'm sorry. Could John, could you just remind me what average length are these staves again?
So there's different types of barrels that we get in. So the longest are about 1.2 in height, and then they go down to about 900.
Thank you.
So would it be used, because I know a few architects who are quite friendly, would it be useful to have a chat, put me in touch with them so they can just have a chat with you about some of the things they would ask for? They're probably a bit on the larger side of architects in terms of, development size and that sort of thing. Would that be useful?
I'm sure Lucy would embrace that, wouldn't you, Lucy?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, no, happy to do that. Yeah,
that would be really great. Thank you.
Yeah, could you put your email in the chat Would that be all right?
Yeah, absolutely. Hang on.
Likewise, if anybody wants more information or has any sort of feedback that would help us, then yeah, please get in contact, fire it in. We'd be really grateful.
Great. Well, I think we've probably covered all we can in our hour today. So thanks everyone for attending. I'll follow up with a bit of an email to all of the attendees, and we'll put the video of this discussion on our GIA website as well, for you to watch again or circulate to your colleagues. And yeah, wish GWR best of luck in developing this further. And yeah, hope today was useful. Thanks for your input, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Good luck.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.